Welcome back to my channel. What you're about to hear isn't tabloid gossip. It's the moment the SisterWives story stops being television and turns into a legal reckoning. The lights in the courtroom hum like an omen, flickering over polished oak and pale faces. The air feels electric, thick enough to taste. Meri Brown stands at the center of it all. Not broken, not tearful, but carrying something far more dangerous than sorrow. Proof. "This isn't about custody," she says, voice low, steady, cold. "It's about identity, about who he really is." A single sentence. That's all it takes. Whispers turn to gasps. Headlines are being born right there in the courtroom before the first piece of evidence even touches the bench. And then that manila folder. It slides forward like a blade dressed in beige. The silence is heavier than betrayal itself. Because this time someone's lying under oath. And it's not Meri. This isn't a reality show anymore. This is Judgment Day. The room is so cold you can see Meri's breath. The benches gleam, the air is dry, and everyone, Kody, Robyn, Janelle, Christine, sits in stunned stillness. Kody's eyes fix on the wooden table as if it might swallow him whole. Robyn's hands are folded in something between prayer and panic. Judge Karen Holloway, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes, calls the court to order. The case of Meri Brown versus Kody and Robyn Brown. Charges include forged custody papers, concealment of fatherhood, and willful emotional harm. Kody's eyes flicker. His jaw tightens. The air itself seems to shrink. Meri rises. No lawyer, no notes. Just that folder. And 20 years of betrayal packed into 18 pages. Her words are steady, like someone who's rehearsed this confrontation in her dreams. "I never thought I'd see my family in court," she begins. But when love gets rewritten in legal documents, when signatures start replacing trust, that's not family anymore. That's a cover-up. Kody's hand taps the table. Tap, tap, tap. Like a ticking bomb. Meri opens the folder. Inside, copies of custody forms, DNA requests, text messages, fragments of deceit stitched together into one horrifying truth. 2014, she reads. A custody document filed in Robyn's name, with Kody's signature. It lists me, Meri Brown, as co-signer. Without my consent. The judge leans in. "You're saying your signature was forged?" Meri's gaze doesn't waver. "No, Your Honor. My name was added digitally. And the IP address used was traced back to Robyn Brown's laptop." The courtroom gasps. Kody finally looks up. Robyn whispers frantically, but the judge cuts her down with a glare. "Ms. Sullivan, unless you plan to testify, remain silent." Meri's voice doesn't tremble. This isn't about paperwork. It's about being erased. About how a woman who gave up everything for belief was quietly deleted from her own family's story. And then, the word that freezes everyone in place. Child. Christine straightens. Even Janelle looks sick. "Are you referring to Solomon Brown?" The judge asks. "Yes," Meri says. "But there's more." The judge nods for her to continue. Kody interrupts, furious, desperate. But the judge silences him again. Meri's next words slice through the air like thunder. This DNA test confirms that one of the children Kody claims as his own is not biologically his. And the mother knew. The courtroom detonates in shock. Robyn gasps. Kody rises, shouting, "This is insane!" But the judge snaps, "Sit down, Mr. Brown." The silence that follows feels eternal. Meri doesn't gloat. She doesn't cry. She simply holds that folder like it's a gravestone for every lie they ever told. The judge orders a private review of the DNA evidence, but it's too late. The damage is done. The stenographer's already typed it. The truth is out, and there's no deleting it now. As court adjourns, Kody storms out, shoulders rigid with rage. Robyn trails behind him, whispering frantic prayers that sound more like excuses. Christine stays seated, staring at them both, realizing the family that once called itself SisterWives has just turned into a crime scene. And Meri, she doesn't move. Her fingertips trace the edge of that manila folder, calm, ready. The kind of calm that comes before war. Outside the courtroom, reporters gather like vultures. Headlines are already forming. DNA bombshell. Brown family implodes. But inside, something more human unfolds. Christine corners Robyn near the hallway vending machines. "Tell me the truth," she says, low and sharp. "Did you put Meri's name on that document?" Robyn freezes, tears welling. "You think I wanted this?" She stammers. "We were protecting Solomon. There were insurance issues. Her name was still..." Christine cuts her off. So you forged it. You used her identity to save your own house while hers was burning. Robyn shakes her head, trembling. It wasn't like that. But truth doesn't come in pieces. It crashes whole, like a wave that doesn't care who it drags under. And in that moment, Christine realizes Meri didn't just expose them. She freed them. Exposed them. She freed them. What happened next turned that courtroom from a battle of evidence into a war of truths. The kind of moment that no network could script, no producer could control. Kody materialized from the shadows of the hallway like a storm taking form. His steps were heavy, his expression unreadable, but his eyes? They could slice through steel. Enough, he growled, low and cold, each syllable carrying the weight of years of denial. We discussed this in court. Not here. But Christine didn't back down. Her voice was calm, but laced with fury. The kind that comes from being silenced too long. You knew, she said, her words trembling, not with fear but conviction. You always knew those records weren't clean. Kody's nostrils flared, that familiar flicker of dominance sparking in his eyes. Careful, Christine. She didn't flinch. You don't get to threaten people anymore, she shot back, voice rising. Not when the truth's already in the room. The tension between them was so sharp it could have cracked the marble floors. But before the storm could fully break, the bailiff's voice cut through like a blade. Court is resuming. Everyone back inside. And just like that, the chaos scattered. The players returned to their stage. Back inside, the air felt different. Denser. Electric. The kind of silence that follows when truth has already bled into the room. The judge, once composed, now looked sharper, more alert. Something in her expression told the story. She had read the documents during recess, and whatever she saw in those pages had shifted everything. We will now proceed with additional testimony, Judge Holloway declared, her voice steady but darker somehow. Before we continue with Ms. Brown, does any other party wish to make a statement? No one moved. And then Christine stood. The sound of her chair sliding back echoed across the courtroom like thunder. She didn't walk straight to the stand at first. She looked at Meri, just for a second. They hadn't locked eyes in months, maybe years. Two women once bound by shared faith, torn apart by betrayal. But in that brief look, something real passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet. But understanding. Christine made her way to the stand. The clerk raised the Bible. Her hand trembled only slightly as she took the oath. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but it filled the room with a strength nobody expected. I wasn't meant to speak today, she began. I came here as a witness, not a participant. I didn't want to take sides. But then I remembered what silence did to me. How it devoured me when I saw wrong and said nothing. There comes a time when someone finds her voice, and the world has no choice but to listen. Cameras clicked. Even the judge leaned forward. Christine turned toward the gallery, her eyes landing squarely on Kody. We were spiritually married for more than 25 years. I saw him change, slowly but deliberately. The man who once spoke of fairness, of unity, began dividing, drawing lines, choosing favorites, rewriting what family meant. Her voice faltered for only a breath before hardening. And when Robyn entered the picture, everything changed. The judge interjected softly. Ms. Brown, are you familiar with the documents in question? Christine nodded. Not the exact forms, she said, but I know Kody and Robyn have secrets. About custody, about money, about the children. A wave of whispers rippled through the courtroom like the sound of a fuse being lit. Christine continued, her words heavier now. Years ago, I found a hospital bill. The name under parent responsible wasn't Robyn's, it was Meri's. I thought it was an error, but now I see it wasn't. Now it all makes sense. The judge leaned back, visibly unsettled. Do you still have that document? Christine shook her head. Not here, but I'll request it officially. Kody's face had turned crimson. Rage burned behind his eyes. This is absurd, he began, but Christine's voice cut right through him. I don't know which child Meri's DNA test is about, she said, her voice shaking. But I do know this. When I questioned these inconsistencies, Kody told me to stay in my lane, or be cut out. Gasps erupted. Even the reporters in the hall went still. Kody shot up from his seat. This is character assassination, he shouted. You're turning my family into a circus. The judge's gavel slammed against the bench. One more outburst, Mr. Brown, and I will have you removed. The courtroom froze. Kody sat, shoulders tight, eyes burning with humiliation. Robyn buried her face in her hands, trembling. Christine looked down for a moment, her voice now barely above a whisper. "Maybe it was always a circus," she said softly. "We just didn't want to admit we were the clowns." Her words landed like a funeral bell, the kind that tolls not for the dead, but for the truth. Christine stepped down and walked past Meri. She hesitated, then reached out, and for the first time in nearly a decade, Meri took her hand. Their fingers met only for a second, but in that moment, everything that had been unsaid finally existed in silence. The judge turned to Meri. "Miss Brown," she said gently, "are you ready to present the DNA results?" Meri rose, calm and steady. "Yes, Your Honor." From her folder, she withdrew a sealed envelope. "Within this," she said, "is the paternity test of one of the children born into our family. This was not done to harm, but to reveal a pattern of deception." The judge accepted the envelope and nodded gravely. "This evidence will be reviewed privately. Court is adjourned until tomorrow at 9:40 a.m. Chairs shifted. The bailiff called the adjournment. But before anyone could move, Robyn stood. Tears streaked her face. "Your Honor," she whispered, voice trembling, "may I speak?" The judge paused. Everyone turned. Even Kody looked startled. Robyn took a step forward, her hands shaking. "I never wanted any of this," she cried. "Everything I did was to hold my family together. I only ever wanted to belong." Her gaze landed on Meri, pleading, broken. "You don't know what it's like. To come in last. To always be the outsider." Meri said nothing. Her face was unreadable, the kind of calm that comes after every emotion has already burned itself out. Robyn's voice cracked. "But you do know what it's like to love someone who's always looking over your shoulder. Don't you?" A hush fell over the courtroom. Some confessions heal, others simply arrive too late. The judge cleared the room, but no one moved. The weight of decades of deception hung like fog. As the crowd dispersed, Christine placed a hand on Meri's arm, whispering something that froze her in place. "There's something I never told you," she said quietly. "About the night Solomon was born, and who was actually there." Meri's eyes widened, not in anger, but in the chilling recognition that something far darker still hadn't been spoken. By morning, the sun rose, but warmth never came. At 8:50 a.m., the courtroom was already full. Security at the doors, reporters swarming outside like bees around a hive bursting with scandal. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Robyn sat alone, hollow-eyed. Christine and Janelle avoided her gaze, and Kody sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, hands trembling, waiting for a truth he could no longer control. The courtroom was not just a room anymore, it was a storm held within four walls, and the air was so thick with tension it almost had a pulse. He hadn't even sat down yet. For the first time in years, Kody Brown was late. The man who prided himself on control now seemed like a ghost chasing after his own shadow. The doors opened with a dull echo, and in he walked, slow, deliberate, each step weighted with secrets that had nowhere left to hide. Across the room, Meri Brown was already seated. She wasn't early this time. She had simply stopped running. Her fingers clutched the edge of that unassuming envelope like it was a weapon forged from years of betrayal. Her face was calm, but her heart beat. You could almost hear it through the silence. At precisely 9, the judge entered. Her robe swayed with authority and exhaustion, her voice crisp, yet tinged with something more, curiosity mixed with dread. "We will now proceed with the private review of evidence presented yesterday," she announced. "The DNA results will be handled discreetly, but their legal implications will be recorded." The room fell into a suffocating quiet. Even the air refused to move. Kody finally took his seat beside his lawyer, a man with a gray suit, a face carved from stone, and eyes that had long forgotten warmth. The lawyer exuded control. Kody exuded panic. "Mrs. Brown," the judge instructed. Meri rose. She carried the envelope to the bench. The seal had been broken, but her resolve had not. The judge began to read, her tone measured, official, but the gravity in her voice betrayed the words to come. "There's a moment," the narrator might say, "when everyone in a courtroom forgets to breathe, when the truth is no longer a theory but a weapon." The judge cleared her throat. "According to analysis provided and authenticated by this court, Solomon Brown is not the biological child of Kody Brown. Probability of exclusion, 99.9%. The sound that followed was not a gasp. It was the unraveling of years. Robyn Brown's cry cut through the silence like glass. Kody didn't move. Not at first. His eyes darted to her, searching for denial, for some thread of the old illusion. But there was none. Christine's hand went to her mouth. Janelle whispered something inaudible. The clerk froze mid-scribble. Only Meri looked forward, still unblinking, unshaken. The judge continued, "Further evidence indicates the mother was aware of paternity at the time of birth. Records were deliberately altered on insurance and state documentation." That was when Kody finally moved. His body trembled as though every lie he'd ever told had just found its way back home. "You knew?" he whispered hoarsely. "Robyn, you knew?" Robyn's voice cracked open. "I didn't know what to do. I thought it wouldn't matter anymore. You loved him, Kody. You raised him. You let me sign those papers," Kody snapped. His voice rose not with rage but with devastation. "You let me carry that boy's name as my own blood. You built this lie, Robyn!" Robyn's tears turned wild. "You wanted the perfect story, Kody. You wanted the world to see you as the holy man and the selfless patriarch. I gave you that story. You wanted control, and I gave you a stage." The courtroom broke into murmurs. Christine lowered her gaze. "Some truths," she whispered, "don't destroy people. They simply reveal who they were all along." The judge banged her gavel. "Order in this courtroom!" Meri finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but it silenced the chaos. "This wasn't about vengeance," she said evenly. "It was about truth. For Solomon, for me, for all of us who were left to live in your shadow." Robyn turned to her, sobbing. "You wanted to ruin us. To humiliate me." Meri shook her head. "No, I wanted closure. You handed me this ruin." The judge called a recess. Robyn was escorted out, trembling. The silence that followed felt sacred, heavy with the ashes of a family that had just burned itself alive. In the hallway, Christine stood by a vending machine, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. When Meri approached, Christine spoke without turning. "There's something you don't know," she murmured. Meri's brow furrowed. "About what?" "The night Solomon was born." Meri froze. Christine's eyes filled with the kind of guilt that ages a person overnight. "I was there," she continued. "Robyn didn't know. Kody called me because she was panicking, hysterical. But when I got there," Christine hesitated, swallowing hard. "The man already with her wasn't Kody." Meri blinked. "What?" Christine's voice trembled. "I only saw his face for a moment. But I recognized him, her ex. The one she swore was gone." A long silence. The kind that stretches across years. "So you're telling me," Meri whispered, "that from the very beginning, even before the cameras, before the covenants, before everything, it was all built on a lie?" Christine nodded slowly. "We all helped keep that lie alive." Inside, the courtroom reconvened. The judge turned to Kody. "Mr. Brown, would you like to make a statement?" Kody stood broken. "I don't know what I want anymore," he said. "I thought Robyn rescued me from chaos. But maybe she just gave me prettier lies to live in." He looked around the room, Christine's eyes of quiet judgment, Janelle's quiet pity, Meri's cold restraint. "I built this family like a castle," he said. "And I handed the keys to the wrong person." Meri's lips curved faintly. "You never gave me the key, Kody." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time saw the strength he once tried to bury. "No," he admitted softly, "and that might have been my greatest mistake." The judge nodded curtly. "This court will recess until custody clarifications are reviewed." Session adjourned. As people began to file out, Kody lingered. "Meri," he whispered, stepping closer. She didn't back away. "I'm sorry." Meri tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Sorry you got caught?" Kody's voice cracked. "No, sorry I ever thought you couldn't stand without me." Meri's smile was small, weary, almost tender. "That's the only thing you were ever right about." The moment passed like a dying ember. Then her phone buzzed. A text, no name. Just a message that made her blood run cold. "If you think the DNA was the full story, you're not ready for what's next. I have the hospital security footage." Meri's hand trembled. Her eyes darted up, but no one was looking her way. She read the message again. Once, twice. The words didn't change. Only the meaning grew darker. And somewhere, unseen, unheard, the next chapter had already begun. Unheard, the next chapter had already begun. The storm had been silent long enough. Meri stared at the message glowing on her phone screen like a ghost whispering from behind a locked door. I have the hospital security footage. No name, no number. No hint of who sent it, just a cold digital threat. Or perhaps a gift from the universe itself. Her breath caught. For a moment, the noise of the courthouse faded into a distant hum, the sound of voices and footsteps dissolving beneath the heavy thud of her heartbeat. The air smelled of old wood, burnt coffee, and secrets too long sealed. Her fingers hovered above the screen, trembling, uncertain whether she was about to open a door or light a fuse. She typed, "Who are you?" No reply. Only another message, a link. Meri didn't open it, not yet. She looked up, scanning the hallway. The faces blurred. Lawyers, clerks, onlookers pretending not to stare but hungry for scandal. Could it be Christine? Janelle? Someone who had grown tired of Kody's lies and decided to finally let the truth breathe? Or maybe someone who had waited years, biding their time in the shadows, knowing that one day this courtroom would open its gates to reckoning. Not all truths explode. Some simply wait, quietly, patiently, until the right heart breaks open. Meri sat down on the long wooden bench outside courtroom 2B. The envelope from the DNA test still rested beside her like a ticking clock. And then she clicked the link. A grainy video file appeared. St. George Regional Hospital, August 2011. Meri leaned forward, holding her breath as the black and white footage flickered to life. There was Robyn, visibly pregnant, pacing nervously in the hallway. Her hands fluttered, her lips moved as if in prayer. Then from the far end of the hall, a man entered the frame. Not Kody, tall, clean-cut, wearing a tan jacket. His stride was familiar, too familiar. He walked straight to Robyn, placed a hand on her arm. The kind of touch that speaks of history. They spoke quickly, intimately. Robyn clutched his wrist, her face softening in a way Meri hadn't seen in years. Then, shockingly, they embraced. Meri froze the frame. The air in her lungs turned to stone. This wasn't a visitor. This was someone from before. Someone who had never truly left. She pressed play again. The man handed Robyn a small envelope. She slipped it into her purse before disappearing behind the exam room doors. A few seconds later, the man turned and walked out of frame. Clean, quiet, as if he'd erased himself from the world. Meri's fingers shook. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. This child, Solomon, was never Kody's. And Robyn had known all along. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was powder dry, ready to ignite. Every seat was filled. Christine tapped her knees nervously. Janelle bit her lip until it nearly bled. Even the court reporter looked pale. The tension was a living thing, crawling under the benches and wrapping around everyone's throat. Then the door opened. The judge entered, her face unreadable, but her eyes sharper than a scalpel missed nothing. Before we proceed, she said, "I've been made aware of new evidence submitted anonymously." She looked toward Meri. "Ms. Brown, please step forward." Meri rose, holding a USB drive like it was a live grenade. "Your Honor, this footage was sent to me less than an hour ago," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "It directly contradicts previous testimony and confirms my earlier claims." The judge nodded, extending her hand. "We'll review it in chambers first. If it's legitimate, it will be admitted into record." Robyn shot up from her chair, panic slicing through her composure. You can't do that without legal—" "I most certainly can," the judge interrupted, eyes cold. "And I will." Robyn sat, her body collapsing in defeat. In a courtroom, there's one law greater than any written one. The truth always finds a way. Even if it burns everything in its path. 10 minutes later, the judge returned, face pale but firm. "This video is authentic," she said flatly. Every eye in the room turned to Robyn. "Miss Sullivan," the judge's tone was steel, "do you know the man in the footage?" Robyn's lips parted, but no sound came. "Miss Sullivan," the judge repeated. "Was that man Solomon Brown's biological father?" The room leaned forward as one. Robyn's voice emerged, thin, breaking. "Yes." The courtroom gasped. Christine covered her mouth. Janelle whispered a prayer. Meri's eyes filled, not with shock, but with the cold relief of a truth finally freed. At that exact moment, the door creaked. Kody entered. "What?" he breathed, confusion etched across his face. Robyn turned to him, voice trembling. "You weren't supposed to see that." "No one was." Kody's jaw locked. The world around him tilted. "You said you weren't in contact with him. You said he was dangerous." Robyn's tears spilled freely. "I had to." "You would have left me." "I should have," Kody snapped, his voice shaking with rage. "You let me raise that boy as mine. You let me sign those papers." You let me become a lie. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Order, or I will have the court cleared. But no sound could drown out the silence that followed. The silence of a family crumbling from the inside. Then Christine stood, slowly. Her voice was hoarse but firm. I wasn't going to speak again, she said. But silence is its own kind of sin. She moved to the stand, tears glimmering under the harsh courtroom lights. When I entered this family, I believed in something sacred. I believed in Kody, that he was building a home worth protecting. But over the years, I watched fairness fade, love shrink, and truth become negotiable. Her gaze fixed on Kody. When I finally said I wanted out, you told the children I abandoned them. But it was you who abandoned us long before that. Kody looked down, his jaw tight, the mask slipping. Christine inhaled deeply. You said love was sacrifice, but it was always us doing the sacrificing for you. A single tear traced her cheek. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is finally say enough. The courtroom didn't breathe. Even the judge's gavel trembled slightly in her hand. Then, softly, the judge said, Mr. Brown, before this court moves to rulings, you may make your final statement. Kody rose slowly, shoulders heavy under the weight of what was left of his empire. He looked at Meri, at Christine, at Janelle, but not at Robyn. I thought I was building something immortal, he whispered. I thought I was chosen. Turns out I was just a man mistaking control for leadership. He met Meri's eyes. You were right. You always were. I just couldn't stand not being the hero in your story. Meri's face softened, not in forgiveness, but in release. The judge nodded. This court will reconvene for custody clarification tomorrow morning. As the room emptied, Meri's phone buzzed again. A new message. If you think the DNA and video were the full truth, you're not ready for what comes next. Her hand trembled. The text burned into her mind like prophecy. The past wasn't done speaking. It was only just beginning. Just beginning. Today's chapter begins where masks finally crumble, and every lie ever whispered beneath the name of love meets the light of truth. Kody Brown stood there, not as the patriarch, not as the man who once demanded loyalty from 4 wives and a dozen children, but as a man stripped of his delusions. His voice cracked the air like the last confession before a storm. I'm done pretending, he said, quiet but thunderous. When a man finally steps off the pedestal he built for himself, the family can begin to heal. The judge nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and finality. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Court recessed, or at least it was supposed to. But destiny rarely respects schedules. Before the gavel could drop, the courtroom doors burst open. A clerk stumbled in, breathless, clutching a folder like it carried dynamite. Your Honor, she gasped, there's a subpoena. A new witness just filed an emergency motion to testify. They claim to have documentation related to the hospital records. The judge's brow furrowed. From whom? The clerk hesitated, her throat dry. Dr. Elena Morse, the attending physician during Solomon Brown's birth. The air itself froze. Robyn went pale, her knuckles white on the table. Meri leaned forward, heart hammering. Christine whispered under her breath, She's still alive. The judge nodded once. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. Outside, a storm was brewing, not just over Flagstaff, but inside the courthouse walls. A storm of reckoning. Robyn sat still, but her phone wasn't. Her fingers flew across the screen, sending a message that would later haunt her. The camera above caught it clearly, the words glowing on the screen like prophecy. I told you not to get involved. They're going to find out everything. When the doors reopened exactly 1 hour later, the air was electric. Every seat filled, family, legal teams, media, even strangers drawn by the scent of scandal. Lightning cracked outside as Dr. Elena Morse entered. Calm, composed, her hospital badge gleaming under the fluorescent light. She raised her hand for the oath, her voice sharp and metallic. I was the attending physician when Robyn Sullivan presented under a false name at 2:17 a.m. on August 8, 2011, she began. A murmur rippled through the room. She listed her emergency contact not as Kody Brown, the doctor continued, but as Nicholas Reed, her then legal ex-husband. Mr. Reed signed the consent forms. He was in the delivery room until he was asked to leave under pressure before photos were taken. Christine gasped. Oh my God. The judge leaned forward. Are you suggesting this was deliberate concealment? Yes, said Dr. Morse. I entered the original forms into hospital records. But they were later replaced, duplicates, with Mr. Brown's name listed as father. When I questioned it, I was told to leave it alone. But all falsehoods leave trails, and this one left witnesses. Robyn shut up so fast her chair screeched. Lies, she's lying. She never liked me and said I was too spiritual. The judge's gavel slammed. One more outburst and you will be removed. But Robyn's panic was volcanic. She turned to Kody, voice breaking. I did it for you. You didn't want drama. You didn't want people questioning who Solomon's father was. I gave you a family. Don't let them take it away. Kody didn't answer. He didn't even look at her. Dr. Morse raised a trembling hand. I kept copies of the originals. They've been submitted digitally to this court. The judge sat back, eyes grave. This court will regard them as official proof. Truth doesn't need permission. It simply arrives, right on time. Robyn collapsed back into her chair. The silence afterward was nuclear. Then, with chilling calm, the judge spoke. 1. The court finds Mr. Brown was deceived during the medical and legal process surrounding Solomon Brown's birth. 2. His name shall be removed from hospital and insurance records, and any financial obligations under that deception are nullified. 3. Mrs. Meri Brown's identity was falsified on at least one document without consent. She may proceed with civil fraud charges. Meri stood, voice firm. I will. The judge's final blow was cold as stone. Robyn Sullivan will be referred for investigation under federal standards for medical fraud, perjury, and insurance misrepresentation. The room erupted in gasps. Robyn screamed, raw, desperate. No, you can't do this to me. I protected everyone. I kept this family together. Kody stood, but not for her. I'd like to make a final statement, he said. Granted. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. I failed all of them, he began. Meri, Christine, Janelle, even Robyn. I thought love was something to manage, a business, a brand, but it isn't. Love demands truth, not control. And I stopped giving truth long ago. He turned to Meri. You warned me. To Christine. You left because you were brave. To Janelle. You saw the cracks I refused to. Then finally to Robyn, his voice a whisper of finality. I don't know who you are anymore. Robyn's sobs filled the courtroom, but no one moved to comfort her. The judge rose. Let this be the last word. This courtroom may be closing, but healing begins when silence ends. Outside, the storm broke, lightning splitting the Arizona sky. Christine walked out first, head high. Janelle followed, arms around her children. Meri lingered last, pausing beneath the courthouse arch. Kody sat alone on a bench, face buried in his hands. The man who once saw himself as a prophet now looked like a man finally meeting the truth he'd been running from. Days later, the press confirmed it all. Robyn Sullivan indicted on 3 counts of fraud. Solomon's guardianship transferred temporarily to extended family. Kody left for southern Utah, alone. Christine began a podcast on healing from spiritual trauma. Janelle returned to her quiet real estate work, reclaiming her independence. And Meri, she reopened her bed and breakfast. No interviews, no statements, just peace. She took down the last family photo from her wall and whispered, finally, no more pretending. Because sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about breathing again, without the weight of secrets crushing your chest. Now it's your turn. Was Meri justified in revealing it all? Should Kody have spoken sooner? And was Robyn a villain, or just desperate? Comment your verdict below. And if you've been following this saga, hit subscribe. Because this story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Because this story isn't over. Not by a long shot.